Hello there, you're very welcome to Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast. My name is Peter Cinnamon, and those who say it's too early to look at the league table aren't Glentoran fans. There isn't a trophy for being top after 5 games, but there is the ability to print out the table and put it on your bedroom wall, which is pretty much the same thing, I think. In their attempt to best Linfield at everything this season, the Glens have even gone out and got themselves a Swifts feeder team to develop their players. Dungannon Swifts. They shouldn't be counting their chicken, or is it a rooster, on their badge just yet, as Linfield remembered how to win this weekend. Larne are also sitting opposite them in undefeated lounge, and Coleraine hasn't even heard of a team called Glenavon, so how could they have lost to them in embarrassing fashion? You're probably just jealous because Shevlin is top of the only table that matters, the scoring chart. Or so I'm told. Let's talk about it all, shall we? We're all getting into the flow of this league action stuff now. The hazy days of summer are beginning to fall away. The rain on Saturday afternoon reminding us of all what is to come ahead of us. But here to wade through all of the comings and goings on and off the pitch this week in Irish League football is a man who wouldn't mind if tomorrow never comes, as he's seen his side destroy Glenavon in the past 7 days. Former sports editor of the Newry Reporter, the better half, he wrote this, of the Shed End View podcast for Newry City, and Cool FM sports reporter. It's great to have Gareth McCullough joining me this week.
Hello, Peter. Thanks very much for having me on.
It's great to have you. One little note I didn't get to add there. You're a man that did the first ever football film festival here in Northern Ireland. Give me a little quick hit about how that went this summer.
Yeah, it went really well. The brainchild of one of your previous guests, Sally McKenzie, and yeah, it was good. It was good to get quite a range of different people who normally maybe wouldn't see sort of inside the showgrounds. It was also at Newry Showgrounds, and getting people down to sort of see the pitch be in the confines of the ground for a reason other than actually watching a game. We also had Peter McParland there, who's a Northern Ireland legend and obviously from Newry. So we got him over from England where he lives. And it was great to hear him reminisce and great to see so many Northern Ireland fans down on the first night and people just, that were in Sweden in 1958 in the World Cup and hadn't seen Peter since and got meeting him. And it was just a lot of life memories made. I doubt whether we'll do 3 days of it again because it was extremely tiring, but we might do one-off events, but it was definitely worthwhile doing.
Sure, man. It's great to have you on. You mentioned him there, Ali. He was there on episode 1, giving us a feel of how Newry were preparing, setting themselves up for this new league season. This has been a fun year or so if you're a fan of the team from South Down, albeit Newry's split in the middle. I always have that debate with people between Armagh and Down, but you're in the Premiership again. It feels as though you guys are loving the ride. How's been the first few games being in the top 5 again?
Yeah, it's been fun. It has been fun. I mean, there's been 4 defeats out of 5 games, but it has been fun. It's been enjoyable. It's nice to see, because we now have a reference point from the last time we were up in 2018, 2019, where, there was so many statements made about how many games that Newry lost by a single goal and only went down the last game of the season. And a lot of sort of sob stories, mainly emanating out from supporters like myself, to be honest. But now we didn't really have that reference point the last time going. It was a wee bit coming into the unknown. Now we can go back and say, well, actually, we're playing probably better football in these first 5 games than we played at any point in the last time. Now, obviously, the caveat with that is the league is much stronger than it was the last time we were there. So it's still equally as difficult. Yeah, that's why nights like Tuesday night, obviously beating Glenavon 5-1 are there to be sort of enjoyed, because it was, I don't think nobody saw that result coming. Maybe a few of us sort of were thinking, well, we do well at Moorview Park, we get good results over the years, as traditionally anyway, but 3 goals up inside 15 minutes, and that was, it was a nice feeling. Brought right back down to earth with the weekend defeat to Glentoran. So we know our place, but it's been good fun so far, and it's good to get back to the big grounds again.
Plenty to get into then as the podcast goes on, but we'll start with all the fun and frolics off the pitch. First off, with the closing of the transfer window. You boys were one of the more busier teams on the final day. You brought in Kieran O'Connor from Glentoran, and you can tell me about the other two boys that you brought in.
So, well, Kieran's obviously a well-known name, and I think the key thing for Kieran, and as he said this to me, I felt like Jim White from Sky Sports News. Was going to get me yellow tie on when I was down at the showgrounds on Wednesday, and Kieran can walk out of the change rooms because I generally didn't know who it was until he had actually come out to get his photograph taken, which was usually a novelty. You usually find out about these transfers beforehand. But as he said,
Irish League stars in their eyes.
yeah,
Come on
it
down.
literally was because I was talking to Darren Mullen outside the in the sort of tunnel area, and I had an idea who I thought it would be, and he wouldn't tell me who it was, and basically strung me a line for about 5 minutes until Kieran can walking out of the change rooms, and I know Kieran pretty well anyway from his time at Warren Point. I think the key thing for him is that if he keeps fit, he needs to get playing regular football. He needs to stay injury free. If he says injury free, then I think that's a really good signing for Newry in an attacking sense. The other two guys, so Emmanuel Umrore, who I have to admit I have seen nothing of, bar his warm up yet against Glentoran at the Oval. Obviously, a lot of talk about he's come through the Crystal Palace Academy. I think he was playing for Stainstown FC in the non-league. Big guy, holding midfielder, which is a position that Newry needed to strengthen in, just in terms of depth anyway, because they obviously tried to get Oren Casey back on loan this season from Cliftonville, but obviously Cliftonville have bigger plans for him, so we're unable to get him. So Dale Montgomery's been playing in there for Newry and has been fantastic this season. If we get an injury in there, nobody to replace him, or if Dale has to drop back into defence. Mo Boudiaf, he was down in pre-season. He's sort of Irish Algerian. Had to actually go home. I think he had a family bereavement. Had to go back to Algeria, and then has come in, played for the under 20s, and is probably just going to find his way into the team. We're pretty stacked with players in that position in terms of sort of wide front men. You already have John McGovern, Lorca Ford, James Taylor. I think Newry were always going to be quite busy on transfer deadline day because the depth was a bit lacking. So they get three more bodies in, including sort of one that's of proven quality, is extremely positive from Darren Mullen's perspective.
It's a great chance to add a bit of freshness to your squad, and the difference at the minute. I'm sure you don't want me to throw you in this little basket just yet, but we look at the two teams at the bottom of the league right now, and it's Portadown and Dungannon, and those are two teams that have had a lot of bodies in through the door, and both managers have talked about trying to get those squads blended together, and that's one of the benefits for Newry, is that you had a strong spine of that team already, and it's just about adding bits and pieces to it rather than a complete overhaul. You're quite literally the opposite of the Nottingham Forest when it comes to coming up and adding to the squad this year in the top flight. So a few extra bodies in the door through the Newry showgrounds. There was a bit of a swap just when we were talking about Dungannon when it came to Glentoran and Dungannon. A few more players from Glentoran going down to Stangmore Park. It was Ben Cushney, he's on loan, wide attacking player, I really like him, I must say. And finally, a resolution to the Keelan Marin drama. He's now a Dungannon Swifts player. Mm-hmm. On the whole, what Dungannon needed to give up was young Terry Devlin. It feels like that's a good deal for both teams in the situation.
Yeah, well, I think from Keelan Marin's perspective, he needed to play football. He wasn't going to play football at Glentoran. Whatever has gone on behind the scenes, I'm not privy to. In my perspective, and I think in a lot of people's eyes, Keelan on his day is probably the best defender in the Irish League. I think he's more than capable of certainly being that consistently, but he needs to play consistently. He needs to look after himself off the pitch. He needs to knuckle down and get playing football. I know Keelan, he's obviously from Newry, so I know him pretty well. A good guy, and so he's only 22. A huge amount of talent. So from Dungannon's perspective, yes, as you say, they're giving up probably arguably their biggest asset in terms of Terry Devlin, who's probably the world at his feet, is under 21 regular. Dungannon have a history of obviously producing young players that go on to bigger and better things. They probably would prefer Terry to go maybe to England or Scotland. It's a good move. He's going to full-time football. I think it's a great move for Dungannon to get a player of that caliber and get him on a 3-year contract is an unbelievable bit of business. Now, I thought he was going to go full Jonathan Woodgate, Real Madrid debut on Friday night, scoring an own goal and getting taken off at half time. I was just concerned he was going to get sent off as well and get the full trio. I mean, from what I'm led to believe, Keelan hasn't trained with the team for like the last 2 or 3 months, so he's going to be rusty. So I think it was a big ask to throw him in against one of the better attacking teams in the league in terms of going in. But great bit of business by Dungannon. If Keelan placed his potential. He's a phenomenal sign. Terry Devlin, he wasn't in the squad yesterday for the Newry game, but he's going to fit in there, no problem. He's versatile as well. So, and he's young and he's hungry. He's playing full time football. So, a good deal for both parties and a great bit of business by Dungannon, which was one that I don't think anybody saw coming unless you were linked with Dungannon or Glentoran.
You're absolutely right. It made sense actually when it all came out. We saw Terry Devlin, that was announced first. And I think everybody was going, okay, well, what's the fee there? That's kind of come out of nowhere. And I think Marin could be a real foundational part of that Dungannon team. And that's what we're really seeing here. It's one foundational part for Dungannon being swapped in for another. Marin's still young. And the fact you can add in Cushney to, at least in the short term, fill that McBrien role. They're looking down the barrel right now. I know they're only 5 games in, but they're conceding goals again this season. They're struggling up top. And at some point, if Devlin was not for sticking around, they've got a real haul of players in there. Over the next few weeks, we'll see how they settle. Aaron Traynor, much rumoured he was going to leave Coleraine. He did. He's in at Cliftonville. And that's as backups go, that's good for Cliftonville. And I felt that it suited both teams to move Aaron Traynor on at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I think Aaron Traynor obviously was in the team of the year a couple of seasons ago. He was Coleraine. He was definitely the best left back in the league. The fact that Levi Eyes has got injured again. As you say, you're bringing in a proven Premiership quality backup. And obviously, Cliftonville lost Aaron Donnelly in the summer to Larne as well, so who would have been the backup and who again a couple of seasons ago was fantastic when Levi Ives was out injured. So from Aaron Trainor's perspective, yeah, he's been around a few clubs but has vast experience, and as you said, as backups go, you don't really get much better than that in terms of left backs.
Absolutely. Josh Archer found a home for the following season here. He's on loan from Linfield into Portadown. They lose Adam Sally after being completely frozen out of the squad. He goes up and teams up with his former manager Tipton at Ards. Crusaders brought in a player with 2 second names, Macaulay Schnellgrove, on loan from Larne. He's a forward. Strangely, a player who is only 5'9" or 5'7", I saw, based on his FIFA height. So we'll see how he pans into that Crusaders team. And I think it was a story as well. Jordan Stewart is still a Linfield player, even though all the talk of 125 being brought about. There's talk there on the podcast last week that Glentoran were told it's 150 if you want involved here. He wasn't involved at the weekend for Linfield in the team or in the squad at all. Well, that'll be something to look out for, of how he and if he comes back in from the cold, because he's going to be there at least until January.
Certainly ability wise, he's more than capable of playing in that Linfield team. But David Healy, it's Linfield. There's exacting standards. David Healy has played at the highest level. He's managing the biggest club in Ireland, in my opinion. You don't get in that Linfield team if you don't meet those high standards. And when you're able to win games without even having a player of Jordan Stewart's quality in your squad, it sort of goes to show that the levels that other teams are competing against. I think if you don't want to stay at Linfield, then it's I don't think you want to be playing football, to be honest, because they are the pinnacle, they are the best club about, they are the best team. They're my favourites for the league. I think they'll win the league comfortably again this season. I'm going to stick my neck on the line and say that. Coming from now to January, if you look at it, Jordan Stewart's options are limited in where he can go, because Linfield certainly won't want to strengthen, another rival in the top 6. You doubt whether he go back to Glentoran after having made the move the other way previous. There's talk about Larne, but again, it doesn't make any sense business-wise. So it didn't work out for him when he went across the water. So his options sort of are narrowed down quite a lot. So, as you say, he has until January. So he needs to knuckle down and work his way into the team. But, when you have guys of the caliber of Stephen Fallon, Kirk Miller, Robbie McDade playing there, and, they can change formation left, right and centre, where does Jordan Stewart fit into that? Well, that's what a nice conundrum for David Healy to have, I suppose, isn't it?
Isn't it just? We'll stick with Linfield and a story I saw this week that I wanted to chat to you about, and it's from comments made by their general manager, Pat Fenlon, a man with an incredible pedigree as a manager in this island and beyond. Himself, he was talking about the result there the week past against RFS and Linfield being in Europe, and he said, The league needs to be serious about European football, and I still maintain that if we were playing summer football, we wouldn't have lost 2-0 in Riga. At that point, we had one league game under our belt, whereas others maybe had 25 or 26. That's a massive difference. This is an argument which has come up numerous times about how teams, if we were playing in a summer league, we would be more competitive, we would be progressing in Europe. I don't know if on this occasion summer football really played its role. Yes, Linfield did concede all 3 of the goals they did across both ties late on, pretty much as late as you could have done in that second leg. Where do you stand on this? When you see Linfield progress and you see the success of Shamrock Rovers being in Europe this season, is a summer league something we need to try? Is he right? Or is this selectively picking out reasons why Linfield aren't sitting there with a couple of mil in the bank?
I think, Pat has to sort of maybe put his statement in context. He said, they only had one league game under the belt and other teams had 25 or 26, which is a fair point. Linfield also had 6 huge European games before that first leg in Riga. They played TNS, Bodo Glimt and Zurich, plus the league game. So he's been a bit selective in that regard. Personally, you can't. It's something that you can't judge whether that did have an effect of them having played so fewer games in RFS. But the basics are, if you don't defend corners at any level, no matter how tired you are, then you're going to concede goals, and that's what happened. Certainly with one of the RFS goals. In terms of summer football, personally, I understand Pat's thinking, and it's certainly for the likes of Linfield, Glentoran, Alarn, the teams that are going to qualify for Europe, and obviously Linfield are going to play European football every single season. Now, I then, being a Newry fan, have to look at it from my club's perspective and think, okay, are Newry likely to qualify for Europe anytime soon? Let's be quite frank. I would love to say, oh yes, we'll be in Europe in a couple of years, but if I'm being honest here, I don't think that's the case. So therefore, where does that leave? If you change the entire league to summer football just to basically suit the whims of the teams that are going to qualify for Europe, then where does that leave the other clubs? You can't be a disparity, because then we all want to see all the clubs go full time. I think the product that we have over here is fantastic, and it's getting better every single season. I wasn't one of these naysayers that celebrated when Linfield were knocked out. I really wanted to see, for the good of the Irish League, I really wanted to see them qualify for the European group stages. But it's one thing wanting to see them qualify, and it's another thing changing the entire concept of when the league is played, just to make sure we have a better chance of teams getting into group stages. There are so many different factors. Yes, we all love to go to matches in shorts and sunglasses, and as you'll notice from the opening day of the season, where I made a fool of myself celebrating Thomas Locker's great goal against Carrick. Highlights are online to watch. But there are other factors. I mean, if I look at Newry, it's a big GA area. The GA is basically played year round now, but the bulk of it and the biggest games are in the summer. That will automatically, in my opinion, not decimate our crowds, but it'll certainly lessen them. By the same token, I don't want to go down the traditionalist route and say, well, yeah, it has to be, from August to May, and we have to have our Boxing Day games and yada, 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 and then complain when games are called off because of bad weather. From the European football, I totally understand where the likes of Linfield and Larne, Glentoran, Coleraine, who are Crusaders, we would see benefits for them, but at what cost to other clubs? There needs to be serious discussion. The All Ireland League or All Ireland League fairly seemed to disappear over the horizon very, very quickly when everybody thought that this was an absolute cert. Summer football has been talked for quite a while. It always happens once there's a bit of rain or a team doesn't do well in Europe, and there are never any serious conversations about it. So what way do you go about it? Do you let the people in charge of clubs and the NIFL member clubs vote and decide, or do you actually, the most important people, in my opinion, in the Irish League are the supporters? Without the supporters, you don't have an Irish League. You don't have your sport, and you don't have a product that gets bigger and bigger every year. So surely they need consulted. I like the democratic vote. Can we get round every club and have one person, one vote?
The last thing I think any country needs right now is any form of referendum on a divisive topic, if you don't mind, sir. But you make some really interesting points here, and I want to put some cards on the table in the sense of, from someone in my position, I come at this from a journalistic point of view, and I feel like I keep asking this question to other people only because it's a topic which is being relevant. It's news. That's why, Pat Fennon's talking about it. That's why I'm talking about it. And I don't want me bringing this up because I know I'm going to be bringing this up numerous times over the next months and years. I'm not bringing this up because I have some sort of agenda. That's not the case at all. I'm asking it because it is a question. And I think when I talk to other people broadly, and this is fantasy numbers here, but I think if you talk to fans or people involved in the game, the amount of people who are agnostic about it is, I think, well over 50%. And that's absolutely fine. That means you're open to it, but you're not 100% sure on it. And that's why I really want to keep this question open and start getting into the nitty gritty. Because on both sides, you've seen over the years, there has been very similar arguments that are sometimes unquantitative, that you can't put an absolute number one way or the other, and you're trying to pitch it here or there. But you made some interesting points in regards to Newry as broadly a rural club, and I haven't heard that angle of actually the fact that it is in the middle of the summer, in the middle of GAA season, that could be a distraction. It's definitely from a media point of view. I think media is a key stakeholder in all of this, and if you're trying to fight with all the GAA coverage at different times of the year, that's something to consider. Weather's there, and it's about big clubs versus small clubs. So I think I'm going to be asking this question and getting into why would this be an option. And look, there's never going to be an answer. Well, there will be an answer if it happens, but it's not like this is a slow build towards it eventually happening. That's not the case at all. It's answering the questions that need to be asked, because I've heard from people who are pro it, and people who are pro it know what questions are being asked of them. Is there going to be more fans? How would it benefit the team? How would it help grow the league? But I think if there's questions now for the people who are saying that it needs to remain the same, there's questions they need to say, this is why we want to put numbers of, this is why it doesn't work, this is why we think this is better, and this is why we need to maybe change it rather than overhaul it. Because I'm interested for the questions people who say it needs to stay, because beyond, it's the way it's always been, and what about Boxing Day? I almost want to, I want to remove them out of the conversation. And not to weaken anybody's argument, but to go, now let's talk about it. Because I think from other clubs, they've said that the league should start at this time and that time, and we would take in some of Boxing Day and et cetera, et cetera. I just think it's an interesting conversation. And if we can start to define it a bit more, then we can get to not potentially a referendum, but a key decision of, because look, we've seen how the league changes. We've seen how now we have Sunday games, and so far they've been doing fairly well. This is a nice wee segue into my penultimate bit of news here, and that is that the BBC has announced a selection of games. Now, they've been doing quite a lot of Fridays now, showing games in that slot in the evening, but they've announced 8 Fridays in a row of live games. This is becoming a real staple of the league this year. How are you finding it as a fan? Are you tuning into these Friday games? Do you like this concept of 1 or maybe 2 Friday games and a slate on the Saturday? Does it split up the league action across the weekend for you?
Yeah, I think it does, and it opens it up to different audiences. If you're sitting in on a Friday night and you stick it on and you watch it, and I think it'll take time for it to grow significantly, but certainly going from a Newry perspective again, coming back up to the league and being able to watch the teams that you're playing against, being able to see your own team playing on BBC with good crowds. There's very rarely a game in the Irish League, and certainly when it's on TV, there's very rarely a game where isn't some sort of happening, some sort of incident, some maybe whether it's a cracker of a goal, whether it's a last minute equaliser, a red card, and that's let's be honest, it's an entertainment business. It's a sport, but it's an entertainment business. And the fact that these games are being broadcast week in, week out, on a regular basis, so people then get into that routine of watching that's my Friday night football fix, and then I'll go and watch my team on a Saturday or Sunday, whenever it may be. Then I think it's great. And it also, what it does, it takes it away from the schedule of the Premier League and the SPL as well, which is key. So people can still go to their whether Rangers, Celtic, Liverpool, United, whatever, on a Saturday. They can fly over on on a Saturday morning, watch their team on a Friday night if they so wish. It makes it open for more people and makes it more accessible, and I think that's only a positive thing, really.
Yeah, it fills that what I would remember a few years ago, this Friday night Ulster on the TV playing rugby. And look, a lot of these games are streamed. They're not
Yeah.
live on BBC One or BBC Two Northern Ireland. But I've been able to see on Twitter that it's creating conversations, it's creating a rhythm, and I can see how it is working and it can work. Not to get into the League of Ireland Irish League debate, but ultimately Derry plays a lot of their games on Fridays. They show games on Fridays within that league. We're not a million miles away from a culture, from a general football fan base. So I'm really liking this, and I think this is a brilliant commitment to give this real rhythm. And it's not, oh, is there a Friday game this week? Right now, I'm like, what's the Friday game this week? I think that's brilliant. It's so good, and it's a fantastic commitment. And I just think it's great for the league. I've really enjoyed it. And so far as well, even though it's on TV, fans are turning up for it. There's big crowds on the Fridays as well. You know, if someone was on here saying, I think this league should become a all Friday evening league, they've got plenty of ammunition to come at us with. Go and look what these fan bases are, and you know, we can see the likes of Lauren pushing the Fridays. We'll not get into that right now, and we should get into this weekend's games, but quickly, just before we do, this is all taste, this is all nonsense, this is all fashion, but we have to have a quick chat about it anyway. Have you seen the new Northern Ireland kits, and what do you make of them? I know not everybody who listens to this is a Northern Irish national team fan, but as a football fan, what do you make of them? And we'll start with the green one before we get into the real juicy stuff.
As a Northern Ireland fan, as somebody who has been to watch them home and away, as somebody who has bought the kits in the past, I can safely say this is one of the most horrendous looking home kits Northern Ireland home kits I've seen in a long time. Don't get me started on the away kit.
Bringing fire! That's the hottest take I've had in this podcast, sir. You're coming in strong. I thought, let's start easy and go with the little green one. The green one's that bad for you as well.
The green one just doesn't do it for me. The whole different sort of shaded squares, like the jacquard print or whatever it's called. No. They change the kits too often for a start anyway, and I think it's, to be quite frank, it's a rip off for supporters who pay through the nose to watch Northern Ireland matches these days, as it is. But yeah, disappointing, I think, is probably the politest way of putting it.
I'll say my point on the green one. When I look at it, and you described it well, it's quarters. It reminds me of the Patrick kits. I know that isn't a particularly great era on the pitch, but there's something about that. The big Patrick kits and the quarters. Now, they were green and navy, and I would love to see the green and navy quarter just for the sake of it. You know, I just remember these big Patrick kits and Keith Gillespie running about in a top that looked about 8 sizes too big for him. Brilliant. So they didn't. Yep. So yes, the green. One thing I'd say about the green, seeing it's more of a. Northern Ireland's had this quite bright and it's quite a vibrant green, and they're moving down. This one's it's more dulled. It's darker. It's closer to that weird. I would call it that weird. Remember that anniversary kit they wore that Warren Feeney scored against Portugal, I think? It sort of reminds me of that very dark, murky green. So it's maybe on the murkier side for me, but I appreciate the little cross. The yellow one, on the other hand, and poor Shane Lavery has had this image shared about. Look, I think people are going to go over the top and slag it off, and I think that's what we saw on Twitter. It was a bit of a pile-on, but it is, if you haven't seen it, I posted up there that is very similar to the Cliftonville away kit from maybe was it 15-16, where it's all yellow with pipings of black. There's a touch of red on the sleeves as well, but it's all yellow. The top's yellow, the shorts are yellow. They've got black socks. Shane Lavery's wearing these black trainers in the photo shoot that just make it look a bit odd. But outside of that, in modern football, it screams goalkeeper kit, and I think that's why it's getting such a backlash.
That's the exact. I was going to my exact line. It's just a goalkeeper kit. I'll go back very briefly to the home kit. You automatically reference 2 players every time you see that Patrick kit that pop into your head immediately. It's Keith Gillespie and Michael Hughes. And
Babyface Darren Hughes.
That's with that short sleeve down near his wrist. But the away kit, I don't think it's going to be flying off the shelves. I mean, green kit with a lighter green and a white away kit. I always like a white away kit. It was white, players probably walk out thinking the Real Madrid. On the murky, going down to the murky side of the shade of green, and getting a bit dull. I mean, I don't know whether that's a direct reference to the fare being served up on the pitch at present by the international team, because it's getting a bit murkier and it's getting a bit more dull. Let's be honest. Not that I wanted to, but I'm saying that's just a fact of life. So maybe the way it gets the juxtaposition of that dullness, where it's bright and shiny and all fancy, and we're going to see some amazing performances in that away kit. But that's me just really trying to hang on to something positive there.
You referenced that Northern Ireland has had the white kit's usually the one. Of course, let's talk about that, Patrick, again. It was the green and navy checks. The away one was the red and white checks. Oh, that was a classic one there as well. I don't think we've ever had a yellow away kit. It's usually white. Sometimes it's the black one. I'm not a big fan of black kits. We've tried out something a wee bit different. We had the sky blue one or so a while ago. But what is it? Yellow. Yellow. What is yellow? I've heard stuff people saying, well, it's the yellow of the IFA crest. Someone said it's the yellow of Harland Wolf.
Of the was Cranes. It a Glentoran fan that said that by any chance?
I'm just trying to figure out. Look, it's only a colour, it's only a kit. We're having a bit of crack, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes out. It created a bit of an infamy online anyway. So far, you're a fan of neither. I like the Czech one for now, but there was just a couple of games on the pitch. Shall we get down to that? It was the subs that did the damage. After a stalemate for over an hour, Glentoran turned the screw, made their pressure count, and they run out 3-0 winners against Newry City. They are undefeated. They're top of the league. So far, Gareth, you've seen Linfield, Crusaders, and now Glentoran take on your Newry City. How did the Glen men fare, in your opinion?
Look at different Glentoran than we played in the Irish Cup last season. Maybe not as flashy, maybe not as, I suppose, as easy in the eye, if you like, but much more pragmatic, much more organised, much more difficult to break down, much more professional looking. 3-0, I mean, I suppose I've seen Darren Mullins as quite, and said he thought it was an unfair scoreline. I can see his point, but at the same time, the amount of pressure they had in terms of not even necessarily the amount of possession they had, in terms of the territorial advantage, the Newry pinned back for quite a lot of the game. Newry couldn't even get out to sort of play in the counter attack and use their pace. It was obviously something Glentoran had looked at from Newry's win against Glenavon on Tuesday night. As you say, the subs, Bobby Burns come on, scored his first goal, which took 346 deflections on its way in. But they all count. I was particularly impressed with Ali Roy. I would be surprised if he's not starting for them very, very soon, because he changed the game in the sense of he added a bit of spark, a bit of life. That sort of wanted to take the game to Newry, where it was starting to get a little bit pedestrian from Glentoran's point of view at that stage. So he really changed it. And then from a Newry perspective, the goals I could say that they'll be disappointed with, because they're easily avoidable, but they did have chances of their own. And I thought that if Newry had made the changes maybe 10 minutes earlier, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but if they made the changes slightly earlier, might have been a different game. But there's absolutely no doubt Glentoran deserved to win. In terms of how they rank alongside sort of Linfield and Crusaders, I think they're a much better team than Crusaders. That's not being disrespectful to Crusaders in any way, shape, or form. I don't think they're on a par with Linfield. And the Linfield that played Newry were essentially not a second string, but certainly a weakened side. The strength and depth Linfield have is just unrivaled. As much as Glentoran have a huge squad as well, I still think Glentoran will be thereabouts come the end of the season. Aidan Wilson, who they signed from Crusaders, the centre back, it baffles me why Crusaders let him go. I think he's a fantastic defender, looks really organised, commanding. I think he's been brilliant in every game this season that I've seen him play. He was comfortable yesterday, he looks like a Rolls Royce, really good player, and he sort of seems to have maybe calmed Paddy McLean down a wee bit. Paddy McLean looks a bit more organised alongside Wilson sort of doing the taking the sort of senior role, if you like. Good side, don't see them win the league.
He's really taking the lead. You're right there about Wilson, and you say there about calming down McLean. He's got a bit of feist to Will Wilson as well. There's a fire in that man's belly, and he was particularly outraged when you talked about Bobby Burns being on the pitch. The reason why he was on the pitch is because Glentoran captain Marcus Keane had to go off with an injury. It all came from a 50-50 challenge. I'm going to call it a cruncher from Lorcan Ford. They were just shy of the halfway line. It was a clattering, really, as they both went for the ball. Glentoran felt as though that should have been a red card. It was only a yellow. Do you think he got away with it there?
I remember thinking of it at the time, and we're in the stand on the west side, and we all sort of did wince a little bit, and like, oh, we could be in trouble here. Watching it back, it's not a good tackle. It's not malicious, but it's late, and obviously it's the most clear free kick you'll ever see. It's a shame that Marcus Keane actually get injured out of it. Good player and a good guy as well. I suppose trying to take my bias out of it, and I'm being genuine here. I always try and look at it going, well, if it had been the other way around, would I've been calling for Marcus Keane to be sent off? Probably yes. At the time, I'd have been screaming for a red card. When I look back on it, I'd be like, The odd thing is that it's this inconsistency. We've already seen red cards this season for probably less, but we also haven't. We've seen players not even getting cautioned for worse. So that's inconsistency. I think. If he had been sent off, we probably couldn't have had too many complaints. I personally think that he made the right decision, the referee, and obviously warned him to his future conduct. But and then he clatters into Aaron McCarry a couple of minutes later.
He does. He definitely does. I thought that first one, it would have been over the top in my eyes for it to be a red. Could I have seen it given? Absolutely. Then again, in that same half, the ball comes to McCarry. He hits it long, and Lorcan Ford has every justification to go and try and chase down that ball. And he slides in, and I use the word clattering. That's probably fair to say. It was a bit of a clattering. The ball was gone, but it just kind of came into the back of McCarry. And I listened back actually to the Glentoran highlights, and they were saying, red card here, second yellow. Second yellow he could have been given for that on the technicalities of it. And perhaps this is a complete side point, but we've seen a lot of red cards this season in the league. And it's got me thinking really about what's the point of red cards? I know that sounds daft, but why do we have red cards in the game? Just because there's been so much of a focus on it. And compared to other sports, you have rugby where, yes, you'll have sendings off, but that's a massive rarity. It's usually to do with safety and to do with danger. And you'll have sin bins for breaches of the law where you've crossed the line. In American football, there's not really much. That's a very violent sport, to be fair, but there's not really that much sending off. So you can be ejected from the game, but that doesn't really affect the team that much, bar you're out of it. It's mainly based on penalties and being unforced errors or doing something that you break the laws of the game. You have to get moved back, and you're giving the other team an advantage. And the more and more I watch the game, and this is not exclusively to the Irish League, it feels like red cards are part of every bit of play. A red card is clearly there to say you've crossed the line. It's to protect the players. It's also to go, you've broken the rules, you've gained an unfair advantage, and now you're going to have a punishment for you and your team forced against you. And looking at those two challenges from Lorcan Ford, yes, he could have got 2 yellow cards for that. And yes, a yellow card was there to say, bit of a tasty challenge there. Don't do it again, or you are putting players in danger. And maybe it's just me, and I'm not against all red cards, but it feels like so much of the game now is that tackle a red card? Was that dangerous? We're getting into like technicalities. Let's get the book out and go, well, technically was he above? And I know the referees have to use the laws of the game to do it, but it feels like getting other players sent off or other teams getting caught out going, 2 yellows, you're off. It's like becoming a real part of the game, and I don't know if I love it. I don't see across football right now lots of red cards, and yes, Glenalvin's mainly to blame for it, but I don't see lots of injuries, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't see loads of dangerous tackles. McCulloch last week for Ballymena, it was high, it's off. That's a deterrent to stop doing that. But was Lorcan Ford reckless? Did he deserve to be punished that much in that game if he got 2 yellows there to go, you're off, you've crossed the line, we can't have dangerous players like you on the pitch? Or was that I know you didn't get sent off, but we've caught you out there, mate, time to go? Do you know, what's the difference here?
Well, I suppose, I mean, very briefly, the second one, the one where the foul on Aaron McCarry, I mean, we can all see it in the highlights when he's running across and he slips. He doesn't even go to make a challenge. He doesn't actually slide in. He slips. He falls as momentum takes him into him. That's why Tim Marshall didn't send him off. But if you look at, like, for example, the Mark Randall on Friday night for Larne, gets 2 yellow cards in the space of what, a minute. Neither of them for tackles per se. So both sort of off the ball. Like, well, the second one's obviously an elbow or perceived elbow on Philip Larry. You know, this will not go down well. But could you have an orange card? You know, something in between a yellow and a red. You're off for 5 minutes. If that happens after Mark Randall gets yellow carded on Friday night and go, look, hold on a second, you got involved in the scuffle here or whatever it was, go and calm down for 5 minutes and then come back on. He doesn't get the second yellow card. They're not down to 10 men. It's maybe similar looking forward. Maybe it's a similar sort of thing. At the moment, obviously, there isn't an option to do that, but it's just some of the, as I said to you previously, some of the red cards this season, like Andrew Doyle's red card for Glenavon at Ballymena on the opening day, was, in my opinion, an awful decision because he's gone in for a hard tackle. Both his feet are on the ground. His studs aren't showing. He's right in the touchline. Yet there was I think somebody got a yellow card in one of those televised matches for a completely over the top tackle the next day or the day before. And it's the inconsistency. So players will always push it to the limit to see what they can get away with, whether that's wee niggles off the ball, whether that's meaty challenges, or whether that's if you feel your team has been wronged, surrounding the referee, surrounding the officials, and going, as you say, he's already been booked, he needs to go, blah blah blah. So players need to know themselves what those limits are and how but doesn't seem to be a consistent limit. So refereeing is a very difficult job, 100%, but it's extremely inconsistent, and that was always been my biggest bugbear with officiating, that you don't know what you're allowed to do from game to game to game. It is different depending on what referee you have, and that's always been the biggest issue. So I think you could do a whole season of podcasts on refereeing and officiating, and honestly, you would have 300 million listeners every week because everybody loves to have a rant about officials.
And perhaps it's just the start of the season and referees are setting out their stall, and these are example cases where people can point back. This is setting out the marker to say this is the line. Don't cross it. And I want to get on that Randall one because that was an interesting one in itself. And as much as Lorcan did get a yellow card for the Marcus Kane one, he didn't get one for the McCarry one. He was on the pitch still, and he could have given away a penalty against McCartan as he cut into the box. That was a challenge. Not dangerous again, but he definitely took him down in the box. That shouldn't have been a penalty. It wasn't. Glentoran huffed and they puffed and they finally got that goal. McMenamin on the right-hand side, picking it back into the box. Bobby Burns knocked it in after a kerfuffle there. And from there, I saw Newry somewhat pushed on, but like McMenamin, both sides, you said Roy on the left and McMenamin on the right, they terrorised your wing backs there, and they ended up just from pushing on, a bit like the Crusaders game. They just pushed on, they got their goals, they fought for it. And you're right about Roy. A lot of Glentoran fans are pointing out, saying they want him to start, and it feels as though Rory Donnelly's the man that would drop out in that situation. And Roy on one side, McMenamin on the other, Donnelly up top. That's a strong front line. And as much Bar Crusaders, they haven't had massive challenges, they are rising to them and they're not slipping up at all. And Newry could be a banana skin. And I guess going to the Oval for yourselves and your fans now, that feels like a proper orientation, going away to a full-time team. You've had the big boys come to your patch. From now on, is the honeymoon over? It's time to get the results. And we should actually touch on that fantastic result against Glenavon. We all thought Glenavon were going to jump forward and show who they are after that brilliant win against Coleraine. Perhaps they did show who they are. Incredibly inconsistent. You're going to tell me how brilliant Newry was, but Glenavon did play somewhat of a role in their downfall that evening.
100%. I mean, Glenavon were as bad as Newry were good on that night. I think Newry had 5 efforts in goal on Tuesday night and scored all 5, which is been completely not, that has not been the pattern of the previous 3 games before that Glenavon match. To score those 3 goals in the first 15 minutes, you're 3-0 up and away from home, then it just, obviously Glenavon are going to push, and it allowed Newry to sort of utilise their pace and pick them off just in the second half and manage the game out really well. Now, if Peter Campbell scores his penalty, Stephen Maguire saves, it could be a completely different game altogether. Not necessarily saying Newry would have crumbled, but I don't think there's anybody from Glenavon could come out with any credit from that performance, with the greatest respect to them. Even Matthew Fitzpatrick, who's a big physical presence up front, got roughed up and wasn't able to get a hold of the ball, wasn't able to create anything. Very, very few chances. Probably their best player was the young lad Isaac Baird, who's come from Portadown. But even at that, he was very, very quiet. It's just one of those games. Newry played well. Glenavon really didn't, and Newry took their chances. It's one of those games that happens. Just from a Newry perspective, I'm just happy it's some way to get off the mark. And to go from playing the first 5 games to playing 3 of the full-time teams in your first 5 games, you were probably looking at the Carrick and Glenavon games as being realistic possibilities of getting points. So it was important that Newry got that win. The longer you're sitting on 0 points for the season, the more of a monkey on your back it becomes.
Consistently inconsistent at the minute, Glenavon. Who are they? Let's see if we find out. And yes, he is throwing shade at you, Dungannon and Portadown fans. As you sit there with 0 points, Newry sitting all proud and all happy with their 3. We'll see how that goes over the next few weeks. We go to Friday night, and Friday night favourites Larne pulled out of Seaview with only 10 men, but with a point in tow. They've had a funny season so far, the Larne men, undefeated, but without a real trademark victory to their name. They've played 1 less game than everybody else. And bar that Ballymena game where they were fortunate to have that red card, it was a totally fair red card, but if it wasn't for that, that really did help them run out as winners. Then in the other games against Glentoran and Glenavon, and even there on Friday night, they have been fortunate to not be unfortunate, in the sense that they have been lucky that they haven't had a bad run of it, a bad decision go against them in every game, a bad run of the ball, a chance that could have just creeped in. And look, they're sitting there without anything in the L column, and that's good for them. And they could have come out of Seaview with an L. So at the minute, they're getting results where and when they can. Regardless of the red card, do you feel they were worth that draw against Crusaders?
I do, yeah. As I said earlier, I didn't think it was a particularly quality game in terms of, it seemed to be very scrappy. There were plenty of chances, and I think people can sometimes have this misconception that if there's quite a few goalkeeper saves, that constitutes that it was a good game. In terms of actual quality football, I didn't think it certainly wasn't one that lived longer than a memory for me. But from Larne's perspective, I thought they were worth a point. I like the way they play football. I love Leroy Miller. I think he's the sort of midfielder I think everybody wants. That sort of big physical presence. He's got a bit of pace to him. He's good in both boxes. He's hard as nails. Personally, I thought he was the best player in the pitch the other night, and deserved his goal as well. Paul O'Neill's obviously come in and hit the ground running, and he didn't really have a particularly great game the other night, by his own high standards. If they can get that partnership between him and Lee Bonus working, then they'll be serious operators, because they've classed the whole way through the team. I do think they deserved a point. They could have easily wilted after going 1-0 down, and I think Crusaders would probably look at it as a missed opportunity in terms of they could have gone and pushed on, rather than sort of, they brought on Robbie Weir, I think, and sort of almost consolidated or tried to consolidate, whereas they probably could have pushed on and maybe won that by 2 or 3.
This is what Larne boss Tiernan Lynch said to the team media based on if they should have got 3 points or he was happy with 1.
In hindsight, you're after going a goal down, after going down to 10 men, you were probably pleased with a point, but having thought about the game back, and probably when I watch it back, I'd probably be disappointed, because I thought we created some superb chances tonight, and I thought we should have scored more than what we did. And the positives out of that are that we're creating those chances, that we're looking dangerous, we're getting our box entries, we're getting shots on goal. So there's a lot of really, really pleasing things in there. But as I say, when we spoke about it afterwards as a group, the main word was character.
And I think he's right. There was chances for bonus. He hasn't scored yet, and that is probably a little storyline that could just bubble underneath, the £100,000 man yet to score, albeit they've only had 4 games so far. But he had a chance again. I remember that chance he had at Glentoran, first game of the season, blasted over. Very similar again. Leroy Miller found himself free in the first half at the edge of the box, but he was unable to pick his spot and put it past Tuffy. Look, Crusaders also had their chance, particularly in the first half. Hately just continually ghosting into the box. There was a number of times he could have broke the deadlock, but just the finish wasn't there. But he was still putting himself about and finding those little pockets and finding space to get in those positions. But you hinted to this. It was a game that was really fought in the midfield. And Crusaders have that big, imposing trio. You have Laurie in there. Forsyth's a big fella. And they also have Winchester. But Lauren have a battling 3 as well. Sule, just he's a little anchor in there. Just seemed to pop up everywhere at times in between the spaces. Randall found the odd bit of space as well. And I'm going to have to shout out Leroy Miller as well. A driving sledgehammer, linking up play, doing all the boring things well, pounding down that inside channel. There was a red card. Randall got 2 yellows in fairly quick succession. Neither of them big dramatic moments. It was like a tussle between him and a Crusaders player, and it was just a case of you both get yellow, lads, calm yourselves down. And it felt like maybe 2 minutes later, the ball's up, battling for it with Laurie in midfield, and he just swings his arm out. And if we were talking about what's the point of red cards, a yellow card is to go. It's a warning, less of that. And you can't be shut, regardless of how high or how forceful it is. There's an elbow in there to try and get an advantage and try and find space. And you can't do that, and that's a yellow card. That's why he's off. He's frustrated. The manager said that he's apologised for it, and Crusaders took advantage with them being a man up. And I'll have to point out Michael Clark on commentary talking, that little stat he popped up, whatever it was, 65 minutes, saying they had scored 3 goals, and they were so close to getting it. And then there was a second corner off the back of that corner, and it was a well-worked set piece. Crusaders really working the set pieces really well. This season, I guess you can do that when you have the big towering figures that they have. And it was Laurie once again getting the best of his man and just slotting it home. But then they sat back. Lynch threw on Shea Gordon, albeit he's not a tiny boy by all accounts. I thought he made a difference. I thought he put himself about and just caused hassle for them, as Crusaders, I think, were happy not to commit too many men forward and see how could just see out this game. But they give away a free kick. There was the odd chance there for Lauren. Give away a free kick. Bonus with a low, hard drive of the ball. Tuffy needs to get low and down to his right-hand corner. The ball pops up. Leroy Miller. He had to make the run for the free kick. I don't want to discredit that. You could see from the free kick, he was ready to run on, and he was in the right place at the right time. Sealed the draw. And I do think ultimately they were well worth it. And it was a great point for Lauren. They'll be disappointed by the fact that it was only a draw, because if they had all 11, they would have liked to have nicked it. I feel as though either team could have nicked that, and a draw is probably fair, leaving both disappointed. But we talk about Crusaders again. Bar that Dungannon game, they're not blowing anybody away. And while they have the flash of Heatley and Laurie's getting goals, and they're missing Ben Kennedy, and McMurray's starting to find his rhythm up top. He's a battling boy up there. They go 1-0 down to you guys. There's like a soft underbelly there, which I think teams are exploiting, be it a concentration thing or just getting mixed up and caught up. While it's been a positive start to the season, there's something to be concerned about if you follow the hatchet men.
I think from the perspective of you touched on Ben Kennedy there, and he's going to be out by I was talking to him before that Newry game. He's on crutches, and I think he's going to be out for a few months. Ben Kennedy,
Wow.
for any player to for any team to lose a player of the caliber of Ben Kennedy, who he's their creator in chief. For Crusaders, they're going to struggle. Yeah, interestingly, I mean the Newry's goal that day came after Jarlath O'Rourke had to go off injured in the first 10 minutes, and the goal sort of emanated from that left back position. Not Rory McKeown's fault, but it just the ball was played in from there. So I don't know whether that had anything to do with that goal in particular. It is, yeah. Soft underbelly is probably it's not a term that you would use probably to describe Crusaders that often. Certainly not. But they're not playing flashy football at the moment, but they're sort of grinding out results. Philip Lowry has this knack of just arriving in the box at the right time and scores goals for fun. Ross Clark is still one of the best wide players in the league, as is Paul Heatley. They're sort of the nearly men nowadays, Crusaders. I know I don't probably annoy a lot of Crusaders fans, but they're sort of team that promises nearly flatters to deceive at times. But they'll always be sitting around the sort of top 4 or 5 teams. Out of the 4 teams we played this season, I would have them sit marginally above Carrick, but below Glentoran and Linfield.
Frustrating if you're a Cruise fan, as I think you touched upon something that I feel as well. So, sometimes when they're cooking, you're like, these guys are great. These guys could beat anybody. Anybody would be scared of this. And then sometimes, be it concentration or whatever it is, they're just, it's impacting them. And I think this is why they didn't run out with a win. Linfield wore their one-off kit for the third time, their little Latvia number. I stole that from. Credit goes to Conor McLaughlin, who pointed out that Linfield were wearing their one-off kit more than once. It's got a little third outing. Again, I find it funny that it looks like the Latvian flag after losing to RFS. 4-0, they defeated Ballymena at the showgrounds. It's time to pull out the get right game cliche, the injured animal fighting back, whatever it is. They didn't need to really do much to get that opening goal against Ballymena. Oh my goodness, let's talk more about some midfielders. Chris Shields might be the best midfielder I've ever seen in this league. Like, he's strong on the ball. He rules the middle of the park. I was probably talking about that second leg as well. Just tremendous tackling and positioning. And it's probably that positioning which makes him look so calm and makes it look so effortless. And his passing's probably really underrated as well. And when you've got him and you've got Fallon looking absolutely amazing this season, and Miller almost equally looking like one of the best midfielders I've seen in this league. When you have those three coming at you from deep and you're worrying about Cooper to the side of you and the rest of the attacking players, whoever it might be, Divine, like that is scary. That's why you can just see Linfield running away with it. And the fact that they can mix things up is amazing. But like, I don't think Ballymena was going to win this game, but I think they would have rather have lost it in a lot less definitive fashion that they did. We could talk about the handball for the penalty. Like, I can't really. With Ballymena, you can see angles from both the home and the away end with the BBC and the Ballymena camera. I can't see it. It's very fast. You could get into that was unlucky and how that impact. It really did impact the game, regardless if they got that. Linfield were just ruthless, and Ballymena feels like they need to start picking up the pieces this early in the season and find out who they are, or even seventh could be out of their reach by Christmas.
I think from Linfield's perspective, firstly, I mean, you touched on there, if Chris Shields is the best midfielder in the league, which I would wholeheartedly agree with, Stephen Fallon is going to be, and he's certainly up there already, but he's going to be. The build-up play for 2 of the goals, one in each half, from Fallon, and in a more wide sort of from a wide position down the left hand side was just phenomenal, and he's top class. He's a phenomenal player, but as you say, it takes some players to keep Jamie Mulgrew, a player Jamie Mulgrew, sort of on the bench. That's what Chris Shields has been doing. That's what Stephen Fallon's been doing. It's a great backup to have Jamie Mulgrew to bring on. Robbie McDade got his first goal, which was hugely important for him. And you could see in the celebrations, you could see how important it was. I just think Glenfield is just too much class in every department for most teams this season, and it's just it'll be on the day how they utilize that, how they perform. They can have off days like they did for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour against Newry. Newry still didn't capitalise, for example. So that's just a difference. Ballymena are a strange club. Don't mean that in a derogatory way. They're a strange team in that they can be absolutely phenomenal on their day. They can be really, really bog standard on their day. You always sort of think every David Jeffrey team has a bit about them, and Ballymena do. Ballymena have some great players and they can put in some great performances, but there'll be no man more frustrated than David Jeffrey getting beaten 4-0 at home by his former club. No team should really lose 4-0 at home to a team in the same league as them. 4-0 or if you're Gladden 5-1. Ballymena, again, they'll be one of the clubs that, suppose, from my point of view as a Newry fan, be looking at going and trying to take take points off teams like Ballymena, like Glentoran, if you're gonna push up that table. And Ballymena, for a club their size, don't want to get dragged down into that sort of almost third league there is in one. You've got your top sort of 4 or 5, then you've got your mid-table, and then you've got your bottom ones, and Ballymena are sort of teetering on the brink.
I think I really underrated how they would really be impacted by the loss of Winchester and Miller. I think I underrated that, and it's those areas in the centre of the spine of that team and centre midfield and at the minute the centre of defence where they're just getting caught out, and they're like that the second Linfield goal, like from the Ballymena, and like they're just between O'Neill and the other Ballymena defenders clattering into each other, as Linfield to sweep the ball in past them, like work to be done. And it's tough because I'm sure David Jeffrey this is now edging towards maybe the weakest team he's ever managed, and maybe they're just victims of the schedule and they need to find themselves, but it's tough going for Ballymena. That's a tough start to the season for them, and how they turn it around, we'll just have to see. And a team who'll really need to start turning things around, or they're going to have a really long season, is Dungannon Swifts. We go back to Friday night, the league's top scorers against the leakiest defence in the league, and it wasn't a 0-0. 4-0 to Coleraine against Dungannon by half-time. On Kearney's men looking scintillating as they blitz the Swifts in an all too familiar result now for Tyrone's only topside team. The Bandsiders will hope now after that result that Glenavon defeat the Friday previous was just a mere blip. And they're one of the most talked about teams early in the season so far, and you can see why. Just a blitzkrieg of attacking play. And when you're going against a team like Dungannon who got a lot more bodies, but they're just not clicking together, they were torn apart at times.
I mean, I think that Glenavon result for Coleraine the previous week will go down, will be seen as a blip in time. I mean, if you look at, again, another really astute signing. I mean, I spoke to Linton Kane at the Premiership launch, and we were saying about, it was almost a complete overhaul of the Coleraine squad, and he said in his time at the club it's been the most amount of players come in and have gone in one transfer window, and he said he was excited by it. He says, it was an improvement in the squad, and it's sort of been borne out. Ironically, brought in Lee Lynch, was another really clever signing, and probably wasn't getting as much game time as he would have wanted at Larne, and Coleraine have taken him in. Top class player, really, really good player. But then you've got Matthew Shevlin, who was already there, who is just getting better and better and better. I think, oddly, Linfield might look back and regretted letting him go before he went to Ballymena, because they've essentially signed a player to replace him, or what they thought to replace him, maybe a couple of years later, in Ethan Devine. And Matthew Shevlin is now grown into that sort of Premiership striker. But in terms of, for pace and power, and he's sort of filled out now, and he's fully grown, if you like. They're going to rip a lot of teams apart. I don't think Dungannon will be alone in conceding 5 against Coleraine. From Dungannon's perspective, I think, it's probably an easy accusation to level at them at Linfield's side. They need to be a bit more pragmatic at times. It's all well and good trying to play the ball out from the back all the time. If you're going to get caught out, you have to remember you're not Real Madrid, you're not Barcelona. Horses for courses sometimes. It didn't work with Stephen McDonnell when he came in as Warren Point manager a couple of years ago and decided this is the way he wanted to play. The exact same scenario with Dean, where he wants to play the ball out from the back. They want to, be a great football inside, and for it to look good, you're going, that's great, and we all love to see that. But if it's costing you points week in, week out, you're not going to turn at the end of the season and go, well, we finished with 8 points for the season, but didn't we play some great passes in our own half? it's not going to be worth anything at the end of the day.
Confidence is just so key in this league, and you see the teams at the bottom are sitting with 5 losses in a row. That's tough. And I've seen other people say exactly what you said there, that is it time for Dungannon to think again about this? 18 goals conceded in 5 games. That's huge. How they approach the rest of the season, you have to be pragmatic at a certain point. But maybe these are just also the growing pains of trying to develop a team beyond just surviving every season. So that's why he's in the job. He has to make those tough decisions. When do you shift and when do you hold? A team, though, with a massive amount of confidence is Coleraine. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, go onto Colerane's social media, as they have clipped up the swift counter-attack, and it all comes from Lee Lynch running in the midfield. He looked up, and you'll not see a better ball, just waited for Glacken to push on. There's another boy. Lots of talk about Shevlin. Glacken on his day in this league is unplayable. He is one of the top attacking threats, and if he continues in this form, he could be in the top 11 in this league if you were to create the best players of the season, because he is also, as much as Shevlin, as much as it's Lynch, Glacken cannot be underrated as a quality player that he is. For the first time since, over 10 years, Carrick Rangers have scored 2 times in 5 successive games. That's a nice stat I stole from the paper there. And that's what they do so far this season. They score 2 goals, and usually it's from the boot of Allen and now recently Mitchell. Do they only score amazing goals now? Is that the rule for Carrick Rangers? It's a great start to the season. The only worry is that they kind of did this last season, and they did get away with it, but the worry will be, could that be on the horizon? But let's not focus on that. Let's talk about another screamer from Andrew Mitchell. It feels like any time he gets the ball now in that part of the pitch, like maybe 5-10 yards outside of the box, Rangers fans going to be like, go for it, mate.
Yeah, the one he scored against Glenavon is a cracker. The one he scored against Linfield is a cracker. Fantastic midfielder. I think the difference probably in Carrick this season, maybe then you're right, they've started quickly this season as they did last season, is that they strengthened down the spine of their team. They signed Glendenning, signed Cameron Stewart, signed Andy Mitchell, they signed Curtis Allen. Those guys that have played Premier League, Premiership football for a while now. Particularly Andy Mitchell and Curtis Allen are very, very astute signings by Sturdy King. And then you look at Curtis scores such a range of goals. He scored a poacher's goal against Newry. He scores an unbelievable overhead kick against Glenavon. He's a goal scorer supreme, and most clubs would kill to have somebody that can put the ball in the back of the net the way he can. So, yeah, things are looking positive for Carrick at the moment. They've already won 2 or 3 games, I think. You wouldn't bet them, breaking that top 6 where they're going at the minute. But as you say, have to sustain it.
It's experience which has really helped them this season, and the only question I will have is how long can you keep that up with a squad with so much minutes on the body? It is nice and summery, and they're playing well. And so far, all those players that have had a big distinguished Irish League career, where sometimes when they sign for a team lower in the division, it can go 2 ways. We've all seen the top players go to a club down there and it just not working out, and within 10 games, like whatever happened to them. But the likes of Cushley the season before, Irvin the season before, now Allen coming in, they're fighting every week. And if they can stay healthy and can have as much vigour and fight with every game, they'll have a chance every time. And Glenavon, we talked about earlier on, just about that inconsistency. I don't know what you do for the first one that Mitchell scores. What can you do? A brilliantly worked goal from Fitzpatrick there to take the lead. It was really, really well done. Not just as an individual class to just take it round the keeper. And Carrick fans must have been winding him up because he celebrated right in front of the Carrick fans after that. They get back into it, Carrick. Glenavon scored another one on Owen Bradley, saying sorry the only way he can for that opening day red card with a goal in the 6-yard box. Then Glenavon get a red card. Are we surprised? No, we're not. I feel as though Robbie Garrett was a wee bit unlucky. Will not get caught up in a whole nother last man debate, but he a bit clumsy coming together as as the Carrick player runs on to goal. It's just one of those things. And then, of course, Carrick come back and get the draw and leave Mourneview with a point. We talked about the brilliant Mitchell goal. Let's talk about the Allen goal. The goal where all of us in five-a-side saying that, oh, we've run too far on. It's going to go beyond us. And we go, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if we just scored a wee overhead kick here. Obviously, Allen's had an incredible football career, and he actually has the skill and ability to do it. But we've all seen players try that and go and completely miss the ball. He just hit nothing but air. But he connected and he fired it home. That is a great goal to score for Allen. That goes straight on the best of highlights DVD, no matter what stage of a career he's at.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that what's so brilliant about it is that he's outside the post. He's wider than the post and has to volley it or has to overhead kick it at an angle. I know he's about 6 or 8 yards out, but to even get that on target and to do it at that pace as well is frankly ridiculous and frankly annoying that somebody's that good that plays for a rival team. But yeah, I mean, like he scores so many different goals. He can score goals from outside the box. He can score poachers goals. He can also score goals like that, and it's great to see. I mean, Carrick has been witness now to 4 of the best goals in the league this season, and 3 of them by Carrick, both Andy Mitchell strikes and Curtis Allen strike. But obviously, the goal that will win goal of the season, Thomas Lockhart's opening the 45-yard thunderbolt into the top corner.
Absolutely, Gareth. Had that on my bingo card for you today. That completes it. Only took a fair amount of the show until you mentioned that. He did try another one in that Glentoran game. I saw him have a good oil whack from far. He's going to try and repeat that. He wants to create a name for himself in that. But if Lockhart and Mitchell only scores worldies, then Ronan Hill only scores goals very, very quickly at the start of games, as he helped his Cliftonville side win 2-1 against Portadown at Shamrock Park. He scored within 2 minutes there. They rushed out to a 2-0 lead. I think it was by about 25, 27 minutes. They were already 2-0 up against the Ports, and I'm sure the Shamrock faithful were thinking, oh no, not again. Like the second goal, Jethron Barr just gifts it to the Reds. He goes up from a corner to get the ball. He drops it. Ryan Curran still has something to do there. He has the ball. There's a sea of Portadown bodies in front of him, but he just slips it past them all to get 2-0. But Portadown go straight up almost from the kickoff, maybe a minute or two after the Cliftonville goal, and they get back into it. A very nice finish from Jordan Jenkins. A lot of detractors, I must say, I saw online from his ex-team saying, this is not going to be Portadown's hero, but that was a great goal for him to get. And yes, he scored a penalty against Crusaders, and he's got 2 goals now. I'm sure Portadown would like to have more players than just him score goals, but they need a striker, and he could be Portadown's man. And by all accounts, watching the highlights, Cliftonville didn't have the absolute runaround of the division's bottom team. Portadown are fighting some sort of rhythm, some sort of cohesion. Ultimately, it wasn't enough for them. But do you look at Portadown and how they've started their season and think we can get at them? I'm sure you're delighted with how they've started their season.
I don't revel in other teams' misery. And I have to say, yeah, I mean, I think Portadown fans will be honest enough to know that if any of us finishes, if Portadown finish above Newry and Dungannon, if Newry finish above Portadown, Dungannon, it's highly likely that's going to be your bottom 3 this season. There's no point in getting away from that. There's been so many changes at Portadown. It's going to take a while for all the new signings and new faces to come in to bed down. There seemed to be some sort of semblance of that yesterday, whereby, as you said, by all reports, Portadown, certainly were putting a bit of pressure on Cliftonville, and which is promising signs. I mean, I think Paul Doolan spoke during the week about how somebody must have been taking the mickey with the fixture schedule because of who they had. Linfield, Glentoran, Cliftonville, Coleraine, Crusaders, yeah, your first 5 games. So it's a cliche, but those games won't define Portadown's season. And the games against Newry, Carrick, Dungannon, Glenavon, I suppose, Ballymena are the more likely ones to define how their season ends up. On Jordan Jenkins, just for somebody who's, as you say, has maybe had his detractors over the last couple of years, I remember when he came through at Glenavon and thought he was going to be an absolute superstar. For whatever reason, it just quite hasn't quite happened. I still think there's a very, very good goal scorer in there. Just needs to be playing regularly and be maybe number one man, which he looks like he's going to be at Portadown. He said a fantastic goal yesterday. I think Portadown will gradually, it might be a while before they start picking up points. Once those signings get bedded in, I think they'll be fine. So I hope they're not, obviously, because I want Uri to finish above them. But like, just for general Irish League consensus, I think that they'll start picking up points sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you're right. Looks like he is the main man now up top for Portadown, and it was a very nice ball from Leo Donnellan up to him, long ball, and Moore seems to be quite nippy on one of the wings as well as Russell on the other side for them. Look, Cliftonville were not completely up against it by Portadown. They have plenty of chances to put it out of reach. Gormley and a few others. They get the 3 points and they march on with a big game coming up next. Ahoy there, and you're very welcome back for some championship cabaret. You thought I'd forgotten about this bit, but oh no, I actually went to a championship game last week, so I want to talk about it. It's North Armagh where the leading pack reside, Anna United and Loughgall topping the table with 13 points each. They've both got 4 wins and 1 draw. Where did those draws come from? Well, it was against each other, of course. A 1-1 stalemate at Tandragee Road. They can't be split, and they have a rather feisty distaste for each other bubbling underneath. I feel a rom-com brewing there. Meanwhile, the big and small brawlers of Dundela sit in third after following up a derby defeat of the Welders with a 2-1 takedown of Ballymena. That 3-0 loss to the Duns was the final act of Gary Smith's tenure in charge of the Welders, and they're seeking a new man to take charge. Perhaps that fella, temporary manager, could be given a go, as he directed his team to a 5-0 hammering of Lowley Institute. Not a great start for Dergview either, just 1 point from 5 games. Warmpoint have bounced back from their opening 2 losses and are unbeaten in 3, and the always peppy Ballyclare comrades are sniffing the top places after a defeat of Knockbreda, where they shared 5 goals between them. A small note for those interested in the Premier Intermediate Amateur Theatre Group: Armagh unable to complete their fixture this weekend due to a referee shortage. There's surely a joke in there somewhere sitting right in front of my face, but somehow I just can't see it. Better luck next time. Before I get into this game week's fixtures, are you a fantasy football fan? I've asked quite a few people. Is that your bread and butter? Have you given it a go?
That's the first time I've actually done the Irish League one this year, and one of my mates sent me his. The fellow Grey fans, actually, Canary committee member, sent me his, and I went, geez, it doesn't really say much for me as a sports journalist. When I looked at my team and then compared it to his team, and his team just looked considerably better on paper than mine. So I sort of gave up. I haven't made any changes or anything like that. I think it's good fun. Certainly gets very, very tribal. Anytime you see the top 25 names and what club they support, in the paper or wherever it is, everybody wants to see their own team supporters up the top of the table. It's a bit of fun, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's particularly a bit of fun when you're like me and you're 7th overall. But hey, enough about me. It's fine,
Oh, subtle.
Not
subtle
about me.
way. I love the way you've maneuvered that conversation.
If you get to talk about Lockhart's goal, I get to talk about being the top 10 of the NI football, fantasy football table. I'm not anywhere near the Sunday Life's one, but look, I've already won Manager of the Month there. You know what I mean? Like, you got to have new challenges in life. So we'll all move on and we'll look forward to this. Oh, and also a thing I need to take credit for, that Larn. See that Larn kit? That they played in a quote-unquote one-off kit. They wore a blue, looked very Glenavon to me, which I thought was very funny. And I tweeted that out saying, very Glenavon-y kit, just needed white shorts. Red card confirmed. And there was a red card. I was doing laps around my living room when that red card was happened. I couldn't retweet myself quick enough. But again, a one-off kit, lads. You're playing Crusaders away again if you get into the top 6. So don't throw away those Glenavon kits just yet. But we look ahead to game week 6 now. We can start looking at the table very soon, albeit it's not going to change that much. And we go to Friday night, down to Solitude. No doubt this will be a pumping sellout at both ends. It's live via the BBC if you want to check it out. It's Cliftonville against Glentoran. This feels like the biggest game of the season so far. I know there's been Glentoran against Crusaders, but these are two teams that are up towards the top of the league and are scoring goals. Glentoran have only conceded 1. This is the real test for their defence now, away against Cliftonville.
And the fact that it's that solitude as well, where it'll be sold out. The paraphrase, it'll be a cauldron, as the term is used. A solitude. I'm going to say the irresistible force against the immovable object type of thing. They both have serious attacking threats, but as I said earlier on about Glentoran, in my opinion, what they've done differently, or the look they've done differently, is that they've tightened up, they're a wee bit more organised. That's going to be key in this game. I don't think he'd make too many changes to side McDermott. They say he might bring Ali Roy in for Rory Donnelly. In terms of Cliftonville, they probably haven't been as good as they were last season to date. While still up around the top end of the table, I think that this could almost be like, and it's probably maybe doing them a disservice, probably be like a watershed for Cliftonville if they can come out with a result, because it's a big result and they put in a big performance, and it's like, okay, right, we haven't quite been up to our exact and high standards so far this season, but this is the game that sort of set us on our way. So therefore, after all that, it's a cert to be a boring 0-0 draw.
It's all about key battles, I'm going to say, because I think that's what smart football people say. And it's all about McMenamin on that top right. How will Cliftonville be able to try and take him out of the game? Because if he starts to cook and he starts to find rhythm and push forward and cut back, that's when Glentoran find their rhythm, find their way of playing. We saw that first half against Crusaders where it was this long ball, it didn't work. When McMenamin finally got on the ball, that's when Glentoran's season started. And if he can pick out men in the box, plenty of ex-Cliftonville players in that Glentoran team, they could really terrorise that Cliftonville back line. In turn, Glentoran haven't been up against it all season. They were only down 1-0 against Crusaders, and this was at home for a couple of minutes. They very much sucker punched them back after that goal fairly early. So let's say Cliftonville go 1-0 ahead. How do Glentoran react? Do they have to push men forward? And then what happens then? Does McDonough push forward? Does either of the Hales start really dictating play? It is the most interesting battle, I think, so far this season. And something tells me that is definitely not going to be a draw, he famously said. But I am actually going to give it. I think this is Cliftonville are going to go for it, regardless of if they're behind or if they take the lead. I think they're going to go for it, and I think they could just shock Glentoran, who haven't had to face that adversity just yet. Larne are playing on Friday night at Inver Park, because of course they are. They welcome Dungannon, trying to show off that they know how to play on carpet now as well. This could just be the game where Larne, they huff and they puff, and Dungannon will finally get that point or points on the board by playing 8 men at the back. Maybe it's time that Lee Bonus will get his goal. And I don't want to completely discredit Dungannon, but this feels like a Larne win on a Friday, bouncing about midfield. We've seen how other teams can just overload Dungannon, and eventually they've broken them down. I see something very similar. Cosgrove on the right, easily the best right back in the league right now. I know he's playing this kind of wing back. I just think with 5 midfield, 2 up top, Larne won't be penetrated with those 3 at the back. And with 8 men coming at you, Dungannon's going to have a long night, regardless of the result. And I think Larne will win out there.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, and it's not to do any disservice to Dungannon, but, I'm sure Tiernan Lynch should be targeting this one as going, okay, right, well, we probably not got away with the draw, but after being down to 10 men, got away with the draw. Crusaders, it's really the perfect game you want, with the greatest respect to Dungannon. Dungannon will have a Mid-Ulster Cup game during the week, so I'm wondering, does Keelan Marin play to try and get match fitness up? Because he's certainly going to need to be, in better shape, coming up against the likes of Bonus and Paul O'Neill and all the other threats that Larne have coming forward. So yeah, I can't see anything more than comfortable Larne win, to be quite honest.
A team that could do with a midweek cup game is Portadown, and as they come up for air in the league, as they'll see it on Saturday, they look up and there's a angry and gnarly Carrick Rangers looking to push them back down into the pool as the Ports go to Taylor's Avenue. This feels like their season starts now for Portadown, but Carrick are in such good form. If they score 2 goals again, they're taking points from this game, if not 3, and the way they're playing, if they don't come out with 3 points here, that'll be a frustrating 3 points dropped for Carrick, I think. I don't think Carrick have ever been heavier favourites going into a Portadown game in their history, I'd say. And it's hard to say the way things are going and how stunted Portadown look up top and how free-flowing Carrick do themselves. Portadown will hope they can get their season rocking and rolling. Feels like that's a Carrick win to me.
Yeah, it's a massive game from both clubs' perspective. Because as I said earlier, whilst Carrick have picked up points against, I suppose, the bigger teams, obviously particularly the Linfield game, the likes of the games against Newry, Dungannon, and now Portadown are going to be the key ones for Carrick. And I just have it in my head that Portadown are going to get a result. It's not a case of whether I think the Carrick players are going to take the foot off the gas because they're playing a team that's down at the bottom of the table. It's like it's going to be a combination of things where Portadown are gradually starting to gel together. They're starting to find sort of patterns of play. Players are getting used to one another. They'll take a little bit of confidence from running Cliftonville closer to the weekend, and they'll know the importance even at this early stage of the season getting a result against Carrick is. So I'm going to call it a draw. But if it was edging towards anywhere, I'm going to stick my neck in the line and go for Portadown picking up the first win in the
Obvious
season.
comment here. The first goal is key there. If Portadown concede early again, as they have done every game this season, they've conceded early in the first half. If they can... And they got confidence when they scored that goal. It seemed to change the whole game against Shamrock. If Portadown can somehow nick a goal, it changes the complexion of that game. Or if they can just hold off Carrick scoring for a long period, their hopes will increase. Another absolutely cracking game. This was a game, after 2 game weeks, I was like, this is what I want to see. Really exciting. Coleraine host Crusaders. That is just... If you like some fast boys up top, this is your destination. Go up to Coleraine, as it will not be a fun day for defenders. But perhaps the defences will come out true. This feels like a draw, I must say.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's a sign of a good league, isn't it? That it's so difficult to call big games, if you like. If you have the Coleraine that turned up against Dungannon at the weekend, great. If you have the Coleraine that turned up against Glenavon the previous week, then not so great from their perspective. I would say Coleraine are arguably a better footballing side to watch than Crusaders. From a purely aesthetics point of view, I'd like to see Coleraine win because I just think they play the better football. I think they're more exciting to watch, and they certainly seem more exciting to watch even this season than they have been in previous seasons.
For sure. It'll probably be a draw. I can see maybe a 1-1. We haven't had a 0-0 this season at all, I don't think, but perhaps Coleraine will just sneak it near the end of that game with just so many men going forward. Linfield go to Glenavon. How Glenavon would it be to win this 3-0? I'm sure they'll absolutely take it. It's at Windsor Park. I don't know if Glenavon have a great record there, but you have to say, regardless if you call it making a comeback, regardless if you call it looking to bounce back from Europe and that defeat against Coleraine, it's hard to think with all the players that they have, this is anything but a Linfield win.
Yeah, David Healy has the luxury of probably playing two different teams, and they both being able to compete at the top end of the table. We'd obviously play the County Antrim Shield maybe on Tuesday night, so they'll probably play a lot of maybe the fringe players there. So I would expect a full strength side to be playing against Glenavon on Saturday, a full strength Linfield against pretty much anybody in the league. Only one winner, hence why they're the most successful team there is. So, I think whatever Glenavon turns up, it probably won't make much.
And it's not going to be made any easier without Robbie Garrett in the middle of that park for them. So, tough game for them.
Yeah.
And last but definitely not least, all eyes on the Newry Showgrounds for Ballymena coming down to try and make their season right. And something I wanted to talk to you very briefly is just how you guys are perfecting the art of the counter-attack. You are just so pulsating when you go forward. You always look dangerous when you have the likes of Ford going down one of those wings, and in many ways you'll take on the pressure, but this might be a different game where actually you might have more of the ball than you've had in previous games.
it's certainly this season has definitely been a counter-attacking thing when you got the pace of John McGovern, James Taylor, and Lorcan Ford, as you mentioned, even coming off the bench, you Brian Healy, Jamie Clark, that have made a difference. Um, Last season was very much, we actually found it more difficult to play against teams that play with a low block and decide to sit back and defend against you. So we were basically inviting you to come and break them down. So it sort of suits when teams let you play a bit more, or give you a bit more room and want to come at you rather than just sitting waiting to be attacked. But yeah, you're right. I think looking back at the Irish Cup semi final last season, and obviously Ballymena have lost Leroy Miller to Larne. There probably is a feeling we sort of owe them one, because that night there was very little between the two sides. Brilliant Steve McCullough for free kick, and he's certainly one of the best free kick takers in the league. You were using that game in the Irish Cup as a gauge of how you think Newry could do this season, and thought, well, look, and be competitive. So you're at home, 5:30 kickoff. Interestingly, this is why I'm not. I presume this is the club's idea to get more people in, which conveniently forgetting that there's a Garth Brooks concert on down in Dublin, and
Shakes
probably
fist.
half of
I
Newry
can
are
just
away
see all the directors of Newry standing out in the main road, seeing all these buses going down and going, yeah, oh,
Yeah,
as they
yeah.
drive past
Half of
on
them
the
are
way
ha-
to Dublin.
Half of them would probably be on the buses. We'll check
I'm
shots.
waiting for
Um,
one of the players for Newry to be mysteriously injured as we go to that game.
there's a distinct possibility that could very much happen. Probably proper Irish League
Oh, burst
behaviour,
eardrum or
it's
something.
definitely warranting the hashtag. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Ballymena are obviously coming off a horrible result against Linfield. Newry are coming off let's be honest, a heavy enough defeat to Glentoran. So Newry will certainly be looking at it going, well, this is another opportunity, and it's an opportunity to get your first home win of the season, or to certainly pick up your first home point of the season, which is massive. You can't suddenly turn the showgrounds into a fortress if you don't pick up points, which is what Darren has been trying to do. So yeah, I'm gonna be completely and utterly biased and say that Newry will win. So I'm not even gonna hide
I
the
think
bias.
you'll score. I think you could score maybe two. It's just if you can keep Ballymena out. And so far they haven't been absolutely firing Ballymena, but David did look good last week. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. But Gareth, thank you so much for joining me. This has been great to have you on. Like I said, I had your other half, Ali, and it's good for me to complete.
Oh,
to
wait,
complete,
calm
to complete
down.
the other half of the
Other
podcast.
half of the podcast.
It's good that I can get starting rumors here. I'm glad I can fill in my shit. My Newry podcasting sticker book. I'll just have to see who else I need to add, as I aim to collect them all. But please do tell the people, how can they find musings from yourself or your creative work online?
You can go on to YouTube to search for Shed NV podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. You can search my name if you really want to follow me on Twitter for some inane drivel about football. Most days of the week. We haven't actually done a podcast this season because we've just been flat out with work. So we're hopefully going to get back into it soon. But then we've just been overtaken now by rival, more superior podcasts.
Trying to steal your
like
market, mate. That's what I'm doing.
Get
Get that Newry fan base on board by stealing their boys, you know?
Ours is a very niche podcast. It's all about Newry City. You know what I mean? So.
Well, it's been a fantastic insight to hear. You guys have been, to steal another dreadful football cliche, a breath of fresh air to the league. I'm sure other people, particularly the teams around you, will hope it'll be a breath of fresh air which goes right back out the door again. But it's been great to have you. I'm looking forward to chatting football with you throughout the season. Thank you so much, and I'll chat to you soon. And that is that for another episode of Kicking Match this week. Thank you very much for joining. As always, making it to this final little bit where I give a rather odd and peculiar off-the-cuff speech. I am looking forward to a few days from now, as I'll be celebrating 1 month since I decided to start this. So if you were there from the beginning, thank you very much. If you weren't, sure, you're here in the first month anyway. You're a hipster. You're an OG no matter what. If you do want to be a proper OG though for following this podcast, you gotta follow me on the socials. You gotta follow me on Twitter. It's at Kicking Match. It's Facebook. It's go to just Kicking Match. And I'm also on Instagram where you can see some lovely photographs of my face. I swear they're lovely. Go check them out. I'm at matches and everything. And don't forget, you can also play this podcast aloud to the rest of the people that you share your wonderful abode with. Go to your little smart speaker and say, hey, play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast. And I promise this episode will probably just play again, but in the future, say it and you'll be able to get it like that. Tuesday morning, boom, say that. You're going to be flying. You can cook your breakfast or pour milk into your whatever cereal you decide to, and you can listen to me talking about whatever happened last weekend. Thanks for listening. Enjoy a game if you get to go catch one or you're watching it online through a stream. I'll be back again next Tuesday. Until then, thank you very much and tally ho, cheerio.